Without further ado, tonight's presenter is Chris Combs.
Thank you. Yeah. Oop, got a little squeal for you all there. Let me find my clicker, 1 second. Okay. How y'all doing tonight? So I'm very excited to be here. I'm that excited to be here. Getting there. How about now? Close. Mic check, mic check, mic check. We did test earlier, but I've gotten louder since then. Fair enough. Okay, how are we now? Ooh, almost. Yeah? Cool. Welcome. Thank you for coming. So my name is Chris Combs. I'm an artist based in Washington, D.C. There are people who live in Washington, normal people. And that's me, along with some of the art that we'll be talking about later on. So I'm in an installation there called Little Ones, and we'll get to that later on. But there's my website, so if you're bored, go there, look at some pictures. No judgment, and I'm on Instagram as well. So here's a little bit about me, just some sort of background-y stuff. My background is that I studied photojournalism. I went to art school for that. I was like, I will be the pragmatic art student. I will get a job. And I did, and then changed jobs very quickly and got to a different job, and one thing to another. But the key thing is I worked in media for a long time, so I was a photo editor. I got to choose photographs, which was great fun. There's nothing better than having someone who's like poured their heart and soul into some photo project and me being able to be like, I will publish that, here's a check. That was so much fun, I loved it. At some point though, I got, bored, restless, and started working on sculptures. I learned electronics from the internet. I don't have a background in it, so I just started learning from the same thing that kids learn with, like Arduino, Raspberry Pi, all these things, just off of YouTube and whatnot. Started learning that, and then at some point was like, I did get the art degree, so maybe I should make some art with electronics. And it's just been one thing to another since then. I've been very lucky. And among the incredible lucky things that I've gotten is being able to be the resident artist at the Sanford Underground Research Facility, which is set in the former Homestead gold mine in Leeds, South Dakota. It's most of the science there is happening 4,850 feet below the surface, which is a pretty wild environment. I got to go there, hang out with some extremely cool people, some of whom are here tonight, and ask a lot of very silly questions and learn quickly a bit about particle physics, some of which I'll share, but not too much. But I'm just going to show you just a little bit of kind of artwork just because I think pictures are fun. So these are the kind of things I make. This is a sculpture that shows you waving grasses from a cool spot in Wilmington, Delaware. It's like a weird format screen. Actually, the artwork is a video. It just loops. It just shows it slow motion waving. It's also got a cool piece of wire that I picked up off the ground. I was like, why did I pick up this piece of wire? And I'm looking closer at it, and it actually has like a tree growing through it. And the tree, I like to imagine that the wire was by the trash, but the tree was fine still. And the tree maybe won this fight, right? I enjoy that about it. The artwork called Elysium. It's like a thing that you can't quite touch, but maybe you can. This artwork here is an outdoor artwork, a public artwork that I did in collaboration with another artist, David Greenfield Boyce, also of DC. Public art is a whole lot of fun. You're just like going outside and seeing your stuff there, and you like change the landscape temporarily or maybe permanently. So this here is 216 computer-controlled lanterns. We might need to do a quick task switch to pull it up. Is that a thing you can do from back there, or should I do it up here? Okay, give me a sec. So I'm just going to show you, whoopsies, going to show you just quickly a visual of that along with some terrible ads from YouTube. Thank you. So this is what that does, just to give you a sense of kind of the brushes I get to play with as an artist. Like I get to make things that change by themselves over time. It's all these computer-controlled lanterns. They look kind of random, right? But then when you're standing on just the right spot, they turn into a pixel grid. And the other artist and I use this to show simple images, animations, just some very simple kind of things about universality. This is during COVID too, so we're all spending a lot of time outside. And so this was outside for 3 months on the lawn of a church, which was just a really special opportunity for me. So that's some of the kind of artwork I get to make. I think it's probably going to loop forever. And more recently, I just did my first permanent piece of public art. So this is called periscopes. And these are giant pieces of steel that I got a wonderful welder to work with me on making. And it's outside an apartment complex in Southwest DC. It's got these weird bulbous lenses on it, and you look in the lens and you see like natural scenes, like a green heron like stalking a fish. Or maybe you see like an underwater view of just under the rippling surface of the water, there's sunlight coming through, and the camera pulls up through the surface of the water, and then suddenly you're looking at a bridge. The conceit is that all of the things that you see in this thing are filmed within 10 miles of the spot. Because like any city, you don't think about it that way, but there's a lot of nature to be found if you look. So the artwork for me is about that sort of periscope to finding whatever you want to find. So I get to make fun things like that. Who here has seen this artwork before? Kanagawa's Great Wave. Beautiful, sorry, Hokusai's Great Wave off Kanagawa. One of the things that I hadn't noticed in this image, by the way, and I just want to point it out while we're looking at it, there are people in those boats. Kind of wild, thinking about the wave crushing them. So I recreated this with e-waste during a past residency. So this is Ethernet cables and a whole bunch of small computers and screens. And it's also a functioning network. So there's a network switch up there. It's got 10 nodes that are all chattering away to each other all the time about you. And it's sort of a long story. The short version is this is about how products are constantly observing us now. When you buy a phone, you are paying money for a product, but then you are also becoming a product. So that's kind of weird. I wanted to make a thing about that. That's what this is. The next big thing, product launches. When you launch a product, maybe you make it and you crest the wave and you ride it and you catch the next big thing, AI. Maybe it crushes you like a bug and the next big thing wasn't actually all that big of a deal. Never can tell. And one last kind of artwork here. This is a sculpture called Pollination, which is also dwelling in that space of like how things are kind of snooping on us now. A little bit weird and creepy. Cyber flower, and you get up on it, and it's turning your face into a flower. And also, oh, by the way, listening to everything you say. It was a little creepy. Sorry. I kind of live in that space a fair bit. Oh, I have a few more in here too. Sorry. This is a fun one. This is called Insert 25 cents to feel something. This is my take on a vintage arcade machine, like something that's theoretically sat in like a beach town for 50 years. It shows you, if you put a quarter in, literally, like you have to put a quarter in, it shows you a cat picture and it sings you a song that has meowing in it. They're like vintage, like vaudeville numbers from the 20s. And actually finding a 20-second clip from those that was not horrid was kind of a challenge. So I work with electronics. There's some process stuff just to give you a sense. Like I get to design my own circuit boards, which is super crazy. I know there are some E's in the room who are very familiar with this, but it's just like, to me, it's a superpower. Like I can take a given design of mine and then kind of make it any shape I want and get a circuit board made and it's blank and then I have to put all the stuff on it, which I do in my studio. So this is tweezers along with a tiny, I think it's a resistor. Yeah, that's a 10K resistor, 1K. That's 1.2 by 0.8 millimeters next to the penny there. So I work with kind of small things. I solder them together. This is a microscope view of a board that I'm trying to troubleshoot. It's wet because I just washed it. No other reason, it's all good. This is some bad technique for any of the EEs in the room. This is an old photo, gotten better. But this is me troubleshooting some LEDs that failed. But I just get to make circuit boards. And they kind of look cool by themselves before I do anything else. So sometimes I'll just throw the circuit board out as the artwork, which is kind of a fun thing. Anyways, they mostly do things. My sculptures that I make, sometimes they have like found objects in them, but typically they just do something either by themselves or when you touch them. And I really like machines and industrial aesthetics. And so when I heard that the Sanford Underground Research Facility would let people come look at their stuff, I was floored. I put in my application immediately, and then I don't know, I'm very lucky. And they let me come look at all the machines and ask a lot of silly questions. So here's a little bit of just what it's like to be there for those who haven't had the insane privilege of being there in person. So here's where it is. This is in lead. That's the head frame there, sort of on the left-hand photo on the right. So that is the head frame, which is to say the top of the elevator, which goes about 5,000 feet down. That ride takes 10 minutes. And you're in there cozy with, 30 people. Kind of fun. Also, it's raining on your head because it's an open hoist, or an open cage. So there's water that just naturally seeps in and just drips on you the whole time. So you need a poncho for the elevator. It's kind of fun. And they haul stuff in and out of it. So have you all seen the red steel? It's just like sitting around outside here in Rapid City. There's like a lot with red steel on it with weird holes in it. Those are pieces of a neutrino detector called DUNE. And those huge chunks of steel are going to go under the elevator and go hoisted down all the way down to build the DUNE neutrino detector, which I'll talk about just a little bit more later on. But you can move massive things through this elevator, which its top is there. And then, so this is just a little bit of inside the facility and kind of talking a little bit about DUNEs, the neutrino detector that I just mentioned, which is like, I'm sure there are people in the room who have some fact checks for me here, but artists, okay, we're going close, not exact. But they're like football field length caverns, and they're like 100-some feet tall. There's two of them, plus a middle cavern, which kind of holds all the important bits. And that's been excavated underground at 5,000 feet down because dirt is massively helpful for filtering out noise from the heavens. So this lets them more cleanly see neutrinos, which don't care so much. So that's just a sort of like view of a cross-section of what it's like. On the right there is a typical, I guess that's the view from inside the cage I mentioned. That's the elevator. And here's its typical hallway view. Good old Doug there. Just inside the facility, to give you the vibe, there's like rails on the ground when you're walking around. There's a lot of dirt. It was a gold mine. It was a literal gold mine. I think America's most productive gold mine. Pulled insane amounts of gold out of the rocks. So many people made their fame and fortune there. It also was a sacred place for many people before that. Those mountains held a lot of, it was a medicine cabinet, it was a pantry, it was a larder, it was a lot of things. And so there's just all this meaning imbued in the place, and all the people who've worked there for so long in so many different capacities, and to have it now be this like cutting edge scientific research facility is kind of an amazing story. And so some of the art that I made kind of dwells in that space, just like what is it like to be going, to borrow a phrase from Mark, going a mile underground to see the stars, to be an astrophysicist studying subatomic particles emitted by fusion. What is that like? It's kind of wild. Here's just a little bit more gear stuff. On the right, that's lead bricks, which are used to shield all kinds of things, but in particular, I think germanium crystals in the Black Hills State Underground campus. And then on the left is Caspar, which I hear might be recently back online. This is a particle accelerator made from, I don't want to say the wrong things, but it's basically made from Notre Dame's leftovers that were in the basement. Yeah. It's a leather belt that makes static electricity. Yeah, okay, cool. And it's also a particle accelerator, and there's a lot of really cool signage around it. And this is what it was like in some of the other less currently used areas of the facility. I got to go around with the trust and safety team and just check places. This is on the 2,000 level, not 4850. But it's crusty and cool, and I really just enjoyed getting to see all these spaces that very few people get to see anymore. And this is also some disused space on the surface. So there are a fair number of buildings that are from the homestake days that are still there, and they still have whatever was in there when everyone closed the doors in 2002. So on the left is the lower foundry building, which is the building where gold bars were melted down. And then on the right is, I think, just outside in the yard. And you can see the same head frame, the same elevator top, if you will. Not really an elevator, but close enough, artist. And then here's just another kind of view down. This is the newer stuff. So this is a view on our way into the dune cavern that I mentioned, those football field long caverns. And then on the right is a blast door because they're actively blasting. Imagine your workspace and you gotta, if you hear like 3 toots, you gotta be ready for a blast. Like, that's quite an environment to be doing hard science in. So I made a bunch of artwork kind of about the process of this and about just all these ideas of like subatomic particles that you would never know they were there if you didn't theorize about them and if you didn't have like extremely elusive and difficult like measurements that you're able to make through very specific esoteric methods. Like without them, we would never know these things existed. I mean, a neutrino is a tiny, almost, but not quite, almost massless particle that is so like, I want to say small, but these things are so small they don't really have small. There's not scale. We can't really describe them as having scale. But it's a convenient analogy, permit me, I'm an artist. They're so small that if like an atom was a football field, they could just like whiz through it, and like the center of the atom's like a penny on the pitch. Like they just don't interact with matter because atoms are actually a much more spacious thing than we imagined, or than I imagined in school. I was like, an atom, it's like a little round thing, right? And they go, wee. No, that's not like it. It's more complicated than that. But neutrinos can just go through matter. They can go through a light year of lead, which is like the densest element or close to it, I don't know. They can just go through a light year of lead without ever encountering any of the bits of the matter. But when they do encounter a bit of matter, they just like, boom, and often a photon is emitted. And so the main way of detecting neutrinos is to just look for those photons in extremely specific, difficult to create environments. This artwork here is called the hyperkinetic resource allocator. So all those conditions I just mentioned for detecting neutrinos, we pretty much have to make them. Like, it's really rare for a neutrino to decay into something else, to turn into something else by hitting it really hard. to decay into something on the surface under normal conditions. It probably happens. Like, I think it's theorized that a neutrino will hit your atoms once every 35 years. So the joke among physicists, I'm told, is that you get 2 of those and then. But you can create environments where at least, I don't know, maybe they're a little more likely to hit something, but you're going to notice when they do. And that's the real rough part of it, is you have to make extremely specific instruments that are full of specific noble gases that are also extremely cold, and also be ready with your single photon detector to detect the single photon that's emitted. A single photon, like if you took a picture of something, it'd be 100 million photons hitting your camera or hitting your film or whatever. But a single photon, you need to pick up that single photon. So as you can imagine, like, this is very difficult. It takes a lot of money. And it's interesting to think about how you go about detecting things like that, or dark matter, which is another theorized thing that we haven't yet, as far as I know, managed to actually observe, but we believe it's there as people. And deciding how you fund research for these things must be like a crazy exercise. Now, I must admit, I went through the quick and dirty version of doing that at a particle physicists pub trivia night, no joke, in Lead, where as an exercise, each trivia team was given a list of project proposals and asked which ones we would fund, over beers, of course. And it was like, do you pick out the big projects, the huge ones, like that cavern, this 3 cavernous, like Dune, do you fund that? Or do you fund like the same thing but a little bit better, incremental tedium, or do you fund like the total wildcards, the zany stuff? I think either of these, any of these 3 approaches are valid, and so I made an artwork that kind of lets you do that. You get to move these sliders, and you're not actually funding research. Instead, you're choosing between 3 video channels of things that I filmed while at the facility. The 3 video channels show things like, in the case of incremental tedium, like, you know, people sort of walking through or moving through a space slowly. For the charismatic mega projects, it shows those giant caverns with like headlamps panning over the walls on a day when the power was out. And for wildcards, it shows stuff like ducks from underwater. Just Monty Python. That's the Monty Python channel. And so you get to choose, like, as you move these sliders, and this is artwork, it's in a gallery, you can go see it tomorrow, but they're sliders and you can touch them, it's okay. Because I like to make artwork where it's okay to touch stuff. I think it's fun. We will make that clear, it's okay to touch the art. So on this artwork, you get to move the sliders. It's framed in this fun style that I lifted from a lab instrument that I bought. It was like a power supply. They used letraset, if anyone in the room knows what letraset was. It's like a transfer lettering technique. This is a little bit of that process. So the original thing here is on the left. This is what I bought, and I made a new faceplate for it, a new panel. It's laser cut acrylic in my case. And then I found like the font-ish. So letraset, you would transfer each letter that you wanted, one at a time. This is how most graphic design was done in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Like for ads and stuff, like you just one at a time, get your A and your B. Imagine that, just like so much precision and care. I just got a TrueType font. And just a little bit of that process, so laser cutting it here and then filling it in with paint. And it shows stuff like this. It's just, this looks like a hot mess, right? It's 3 different channels. One's like cyan, one's magenta, one's yellow. That's my callback to the CGA color palette for any retro computing nerds in the room. But it blends them together in real time based off of your sliders. It's kind of fun, but lightweight. Not a whole lot to it, and just a little bit more about neutrino physicists. You know, as this is XKCD here, or Randall Munro's What If, I should say. Talking about how you have to go underground to see the stars. This was a neutrino physicist. A little bit more about the Dune instrument I mentioned. So in addition to the football field-sized caverns, they're shooting a beam of neutrinos from Chicago through 800 miles of the Earth. That's pretty wild. And the main reason for that is to see what happens, because neutrinos, as it turns out, have 3 different flavors. And this was not widely known for most of the time that we've known about neutrinos, or theorized neutrinos. But they have 3 different flavors. Imagine you go buy a pint of ice cream, vanilla ice cream, and you get home and you put it in the freezer and it's strawberry. That's what neutrinos do. They just change, and we don't know why. They change between these flavors, and we're trying to figure it out. And that's a big thing with Dune, I think, is just trying to understand why neutrinos oscillate between flavors. So just a little bit more about Dune. That's me in the cavern. Very cool. A lot of PPE. I'm wearing hard hat constantly. I got in trouble for not wearing my gloves at one point. I'm so sorry. I learned. Here's an artwork about finding subatomic things or subatomic particles. It's just a magnifying glass over a very small lens, little thing. Kind of looks like a dead bug or something, right? Like a little creature. And it just says this, very slowly panning from one side to the other. What is it like to imagine something unfathomably small? Perhaps doing so is a way of acknowledging your own tininess at the scale of the universe. Which I just wanted to think about what it's like to be searching for something that's so vanishingly small that it does vanish all the time. What is that like? This is, so I mentioned the neutrinos change flavors, right? That's called oscillating. They oscillate between these three different types. And I just really wanted to play with that mechanic of like, you start with a thing and you know what the thing is, and then it goes somewhere else and it's a different flavor. What? That's weird. So I wanted to make a sort of random machine. In this case, it's very inspired by pachinko. So you put a steel ball in the top, and the trick is that as soon as you do, a sensor notices and cuts off these lights. And it's actually a mirror. So it's an infinity mirror, and it cuts off the lights, and you can't see where the ball is going. It ping-pongs between all these nails, which I just boom, 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 nails, right? That's the process. And it goes visually from the top at Fermilab to Dune in the middle with the head frame, and then knocks out at the bottom in one of the three pans representing the kinds of neutrino. It's a lot of fun. I invite you all to come try it tomorrow or later. But it's just for me about this idea of not really being able to see quite where it goes. And it really goes mirror finish, like you can't see. Here's a little bit more of what it looks like up close. I just wanted to, I don't know, I think it's fun to make new electronics that look quite aged or vintage, because I feel like it gives them sort of like it's almost like a brain hack for the viewer. I'm sorry. It's like I'm giving it for you, like this position of an artifact, like something honored that's been passed down for a while, even though in this case, this is all new construction. I made this in the middle of last year. So it's using language kind of that era. Select your spherical fermion, unleash it into the upper chamber. As what does it emerge? I'm having fun with it. This is the astonishing oscillator, is what I decided to name it. Like, it's not quite historically right, because I think pachinko machines were really first imported into the United States in the 1950s. But I'm imagining if that were done in the 30s, like what that language would have been like. So that's the conceit of the piece. It's a lot of fun. I recommend it. Here's just how my process kind of works. I could be using real CAD, like Fusion 360 or something, but I'm an artist. So I use Tinkercad, which is a web-based free tool. It's kind of terrible, and I love it. It just lets me drag things around. So I use it for simple mock-ups like this, where I'm like, okay, well, the board's going to need to go there. And so the actual machine is mostly laser-cut wood. I'm lucky enough to have access to a laser cutter, so that helped me do a lot of the kind of process. Laser cutters just take sheets of material and cut through them, or maybe just nibble them a little bit and leave like a scorched engrave, which is kind of fun. So I use that for all the lettering and marking and stuff. And that detail on the right is the Fermilab representation of the top of the thing, and that's just laser engraved. And here's just a little more of the process with that. So I wanted to have like some contrasting paint, so I just used spray paint. I primed the thing, spray paint, did a gradient, and then to laser cut, like you can put down like a masking tape, and it will just go right through it, which in this case is a really fun hack. So I laser engrave through the masking tape, and then before peeling the tape off, just hit it with a little bit of silver spray paint. It fills in the recesses that I've just created, and then I peel the tape off, and they're left against the clean background. So that was most of the kind of like imagery of it. The only other thing I really did was all the bap, 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 800 nails or something, and then making it look old. And I'll talk more about what that process looks like, but kind of aging things and making them vintage is a lot of fun for me, and it's a big part of my process. With this artwork, in fact. So this is the Ungerauk Kai 01, which is, I probably butchered that, sorry. But it's the word for uncertainty in German, which was the language that Heisenberg published his first description of the uncertainty principle in. Uncertainty is not quite the right word. It just means that in this context, like you can know like the velocity of a particle, or you can know its position, but you can't know both. And you can learn one of those things, but not the other. And there's continually a trade-off between these. And there are other pairings for the uncertainty principle. I'm not going to get them off the top of my head, sorry. But it's an interesting principle. And the idea of like pinning down one thing only to have another variable go wild, for me was fun. So I just wanted to make a machine about that. So in this machine, there's like a big dial. It's an oven knob or something. I got it at the Restore. And it's 2 analog dials. And you point it towards the right with the knob, and the right needle stabilizes. I'm doing it from my direction, sorry. The right needle stabilizes, and then the left needle goes wah, 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 wah. And you go the other way, you turn the knob to the left, and this one stabilizes, and this one goes wild. So it's really just embodying that idea of like you get to pick one of the two, but you don't get both. So I wanted to make a machine about that. I bought new stuff for this. So this is brand new construction. And I bought a box that looked a little too new and cheap, and the meters definitely looked way too cheap. It was all plastic. So I'll show you just a tiny bit, just a taste of like that process. So let me go backwards in time. This is how I started. I buy junk on the internet. So on eBay, I bought a 3-pack of industrial enclosures that were used, but pretty lightly. They didn't seem to have too many holes cut in them, for instance. So these are steel boxes that have been powder coated with the paint, which is great. They're also grimy. And here's how it looked when it came. It looks a little less pretty than the picture, right? Okay, fine. When I buy things that are grimy because they were used in factories, I don't feel like I can leave that grime on there because I'm making artworks that will be in a gallery setting or maybe even ideally in someone's house, right? And what if that's like lead dust or cadmium or who knows what? So my first step is to suit up and go into the slop sink and get a bunch of Dawn, just like those poor oil-spilled pelicans, and just clean. And so I took off all this grime and then started cutting holes. So I used an extremely dubious hole saw. Do not follow my example. Do not use this hole saw. It was terrible. But I got the holes and then installed the meters and installed the knob. And I'm looking at this thing and it's just like so clean and like cheap and weird looking. I don't know, it's like when your TV's got the motion smoothing on and everything's moving a little too smoothly and you're watching a classic film. No, I want the classic film. I don't want the 60 frames a second motion interpolation. So that's the real fun for me. Shoe polish and colored wax. So I buy a lot of products that are meant for these purposes. So like Hollywood, it turns out, has a whole bunch of products you can buy, including one that's in like a deodorant stick format for adding black colored wax to sets. And it's like make a mess without making the mess. You can buy like colored waxes. There's another one that I really like called Rub and Buff, which is it's in a suspension that includes like a solvent, but also just a ton of pigment. And it is intended for taking something from zero, like a raw like finish, like sanded wood, and making it look like aged pewter or something. And you buy it by that. It's sold as like antique copper or pewter, whatever. So I love that stuff. And it's also solvent-based, and it goes on quickly, dries quickly, and then you can just take it back off. So I put it on, and it's too much. This is too much. I put too much, sorry. But one of the fun things about that is then you can clean it, and the way that you clean objects is just like you'd think. I get some like Windex or whatever, and a bunch of paper towels, and go to town, scrub brushes. And when you do it this way, what's nice is it leaves deposits around the fasteners, it leaves them around the lips of things, it leaves them in realistic ways. Because if this was actually used somewhere in a factory, my fictional device, if it was used in that way, it would accumulate grime in this way. Because people would clean things, right? And leave it just in the lips and edges and things that aren't quite as easy to clean. So I cleaned it off and then put a little bit more. And then, crucially, this one's hard to spot, but look at the meters for a second as I go back and forth. When I go backwards, they're all black, and it looks like plastic, right? And then I go forward again, and suddenly, to me, it looks a little more like metal that was painted, and the paint is chipped a bit. That's trompe l'oeil, that's illusion, I'm lying. You know, that's me faking it. So I took a silver paint pen. I use Gundam markers for really fine details like this, which are exactly what they sound like. But you can also buy Posca paint pens, or you can use Rub and Buff with like a very fine brush, things like that. And so I painted on some metal to simulate as though it were chipped metal. And that to me just made a big difference in how real the meters felt. So this is a lot of the kind of process stuff for me, and I also machined a little nameplate because I feel like machines of this era all had cute little brass plates. And I have a CNC machine that's a hobbyist grade machine that I've hacked the heck out of. And it's technically not that good. I love it to death. It's a great machine. It has a lot of play in the mechanism, so as it's engraving something, it wobbles by like a millimeter. And that makes it look hand engraved. Perfect. So I engraved it. This is a font. So this is like an Illustrator file. I ask it to engrave it. It comes out just a little bit weird. And then I grind it down with more rub and buff. So these are some of the fun kind of levers I get to pull as an artist. Like when you are working with found materials or buying materials, like you don't have to accept their level of oldness. If you want it to be more or less old, there are things you can do. And it's just kind of fun as an artist to get to place things in different historical settings. Here's another one that also is kind of placed in a particular era. I was inspired by a lot of the machinery that I saw that had like all these hand-stamped labels in, in the former Homestake gold mine, now surf. And in this case, I actually was given like a whole ring full of unused asset tags from the Yates compressor hall, which is to say, they had all these drills and stuff underground, and for many decades, they were powered by compressed air sent from the surface, 5,000 feet down or maybe even more, from a giant compressor hall, which has enormous compressor turbines in it, and they're still there. But they also had some asset tags, so each drill or whatever would have a number, right? And so someone hand-stamped all those. And they hand-made all these individual asset tags and cut them. They're each a little bit different and weird. And I wanted to honor those as an artifact, but also I was in this headspace of thinking about dark matter detectors or neutrino detectors, like with dark matter in particular. There's such a range of what dark matter could be, size-wise. It's like 9 orders of magnitude or something, maybe more. When you make a detector, you're not going to get the whole range. There's no way a given thing will look at every possibility for dark matter. So you're making like the most informed, intelligent, like smart guess. And your detector that you get funded and you build will get a tiny part of that huge range. What is that like? Like you work on some instrument and you're pinning your career on it, and maybe it's like an amazing thing, and maybe after 5 or 10 years, you're like, oh, we didn't get it. So that's an interesting headspace for me. This machine is replicating that experience. It's called the possibility resolver, although unlike real life, in this one you always do find the right one. What you do with this is you press a button and the light either goes out if it wasn't the right one, or the light goes beep, 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 and all the other ones go out and you won. So it just picks a new random one each time. But it's just about that, you have to press these big chunky buttons, and there are rather a lot of them. I forgot how many. 21? Yeah, someone else count, 22. So it might take a while. It's like my gallery version of that struggle, of like what it's like. So those are the asset tags up close. There's my engraver I mentioned. It's a little bit wonky. I love it so. And that's me cutting these holes on a drill press using another dubious tool that I do not recommend for liability reasons. But it gets the job done. And so the central thing in the show, I've got a bunch of those machines like we just saw, and a couple other kind of things here and there, but there's also like a big installation. Neutrinos don't encounter atoms very often. I mean, they don't hit them. And when they do, it's rare and cool, right? I thought it'd be kind of fun to be, like, my framing question here, artist brain, I was like, what is it like to be a neutrino? Man. So I was given the most amazing material. A physicist at SURF, Doug, gave me this huge box one day. He's like, you want some stuff? And I was like, yes, what is this stuff? He just hands it to me, and it's like this box full of copper rings like this. And I have one of them here, actually. So I took those copper rings, and I cut a bunch of holes in them, and they made this thing. And so in this environment, you walk into a space, and there are a bunch of these little guys like this. And if you want, you are the neutrino. These are atoms. You can touch them. And when you touch one, it does something kind of fun. Let me just power this little guy up. It'll take a second. But this is one of the ones that I actually broke earlier today. So that's why it's not in the gallery. But so this is one of them. And it's this thing. And it's glowing. And it looks cool. Wow. And it's like doing this. And you get close to it. And you're like, oh, maybe it's like starting to sense me a little bit. And then if you touch it, it like sends a ripple, a shockwave of light throughout the other ones around it. And that's sort of imagining what it's like when a neutrino does hit an atom and decays and sends that photon out. And so I just put almost 30 of these, almost, in a fairly dark room, thank you, Matt, in a gallery. And so you get to walk up and touch them. And so these copper rings, these are used gaskets from the Lux Zeppelin dark matter detector, which also picks up a lot of neutrinos, I think kind of by accident. But these gaskets are used for like their vacuum fittings. They're used for moving around the astonishing amount of liquid xenon, so much that when they bought it, it was like 20% of the world's supply that year. There's so much liquid xenon in Lux Zeppelin. And that stuff is expensive. And so it's very important to keep it sealed and keep it cool and at the right level of vacuum-ish. And like, that's not right. But keep this stuff in the right place, no leaks. So you use crushed gaskets. These are copper crushed gaskets, and they can be used once because they make an almost atomic level seal. So after you use them once, I assume they get recycled. But in my case, they got recycled to be the most amazing like material for an artist. I'm lucky beyond words in many ways, but particularly this one. And it's copper. It conducts electricity. That lets me use it as a capacitive touch sensor. So in this case, I'm using my own custom circuit board. So again, I get to do that. It's fun. Just use some weird software, send a file off. So that's my custom circuit board. In this case, I had it robotically assembled for me. Pretty fun. A pick and place machine, wave soldering, all that good stuff. There's a 3D printed shroud around it. And I'll just a little bit forward here on the slides for people on Zoom. And then it's just copper, it's wired up to this outer copper ring with copper wire, one of which is actually also an electrical connection. And it allows it to sense my touch using the capacitive field of my own body. I am a being made of meat. Meat contains a lot of water. Water is a capacitor. And so electrically, like I am providing a function of being a very inefficient capacitor whenever I get kind of near it. And actually, because I'm using it on a backup like connection here, it's like freaking out a little bit. But as I get close to it, you'll see it gets more and more active because it is sensing my electric field or my ability to store electrons momentarily. I found that kind of wild. That's also how phones work. So when you tap your phone, like it's doing a very fancy version of this. Chill out, dude. Artwork. It's doing a very fancy version of that and also getting an XY out of it, and it can do it for up to 10 fingers, and that's all pretty amazing. I'm doing a very lo-fi version of that in my artwork, hanging in this gallery now, the Apex Gallery at School of Mines. Photos of the same. And I want to talk about one more piece in detail. This piece is called Star Stuff. Any Carl Sagan fans in the room? We're all made of the stuff. Star stuff. I just butchered it. We are all made of star stuff. Carl Sagan. There we go. I was really privileged at SURF in many ways, and I got to do some pretty zany stuff. I found this ore car full of trash, and I asked, can I have it? And it went up to the director of the facility, and he said yes. So that is an ammo can. It held like some massive belt cartridges that I think were used in Vietnam. So not totally like, it didn't sound to me initially like, why is this at Homestake? This doesn't make sense. Like, what was this used for? Well, it turns out, even in the modern day, like when you're doing blasting, you want to keep your blasting caps, which are explosive, in a container that A, will hold them securely, and B, contain them if it blows up. Ammo cans, military surplus stores. So people at Homestake, and then probably later SURF, were holding blasting caps in this ammunition can to carve out those 370 miles of tunnels and drifts, 370 miles underground. It's Swiss cheese. So I made this artwork. It's called Star Stuff. And it is inside, it has a diorama, which is my kind of recreation of a hallway at SURF. So I've got like a little model railroad track and a bunch of cement and rocks that I'd got outside. Actually outside my studio, not outside, because transporting rocks in the Black Hills is not something that everyone is on board with. So this is rocks from my studio, along with a few tools that are standing in for pipes. And in it, you see yourself. You see your reflection. And you also, if you crane around a little bit, you'll see some dappled stars, a video playing of just like dappled black and white stars moving overhead. This is inside the lower foundry building at SURF. So these are lockers. This is my most Blair Witch moment here. I'm like GoPro and headlamp and like, whoa, these lockers are open. What are in these lockers? I was allowed with an escort, of course, several people watching everything I did, but I was allowed to look around in the disused buildings, which will be probably removed at some point. But when it closed down, people just left everything. So there were calendars up on the wall for like, hey, what's the lunch gonna be next week? Like, oh, turkey on Thursday, 2002. And also like people's lockers for the most part were emptied out, but someone left this mirror. It's like a beautiful artifact. It was already clearly very old at the time I got it. It's some combination of glass resin, so not that old, but not that young. Some kind of bakelite-y plastic almost. And then a gold coating, which apt. It's a gold foundry. They're making gold bars. Of course, it's got a gold coating on it. And it's just so decrepit. And I just imagine someone working all day and then at the end of their shift, like trying to see if they've got any goop on their face and just checking it every single day for however long. And it's such a decrepit mirror. Like it had been in there for a long time. It was not exposed to the elements. So this is where that it accumulated over like a normal, like in a normal indoor environment. I just really appreciated this artifact and I wanted to kind of celebrate it. And so I made this scene. So you see yourself in it. And much like I imagine it is like for the physicists who are going almost a mile underground to study the stars and think about the heavens, like there are so many other people who work on all these things at SURF too. And every one of these roles is vital to it. And there's just like so many other people behind each of these things. The scientific instruments have thousands of international collaborators who are all just working constantly on the data pouring out of these instruments. So many people are putting so much into it. From all different kind of backgrounds and skill sets, and like I loved exploring the wastewater facility, and like the plumbing alone at this place is wild. Like just so many support roles, and every single one of them in their own ways are like contributing to this vast enterprise of like studying the heavens. And so I hope that you get to go see yourself in it and see how you are expressing the stars and how we are all in this sort of same quest together. And maybe you find some aspect of this interesting, and you can go make weird sculptures too if you want. That's cool. But I also just highly recommend that people keep up with SURF because they're doing cool stuff. So that's the spiel for the most part. I've got a couple. So if you want to come out to the opening, we're doing a reception with snacks. I've seen a couple of different end times. Let's go with the latest one because that was in the press release. And I'll do a little artist talk pretty similar to this, honestly, but with the artworks in the room so I can point stuff out. And so that's kind of the main thing here. I'm curious if people have questions. I know I just spieled and presented a lot of weird looking things. And you're like, what? Artwork that plugs into the wall? Like what? How do you design that? What? I don't know. So any questions?
So you're from Washington or?
The question is whether I'm from Washington. Sorry for just resume. So I am basically from the DC area. I grew up in Northern Virginia, just on the other side of the bridge. The distinction was very important for a few decades there. Not so much now. So yeah, I live in Northeast DC. I did spend just shy of 4 years in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, where I met my incredibly patient and supportive wife, Eden Prairie High School. And yeah, Minnesota was just, I don't know, I was thinking about that earlier as I saw, oh wow, what is all this snow? Brought me back. But yeah, basically from the DC area. And I have a studio just over the border. I live in Northeast DC, which is like a very cute neighborhood, Brookland. It's sort of, it was described for a long time as Little Rome because it has a ton of Catholic institutions. And honest to God, there are like nuns walking around. So it's not what people picture when you hear DC. It's like people have lawns, like there's a home and garden competition / showcase every year. So, you know, we got our neighbor stuff going on. And then my studio is just over the border into Maryland in another streetcar suburb called Mount Rainier. And I'm there in a light industrial warehouse with a whole bunch of other artists, which is a great, fun environment. In my building, there are about 16 artists. It's called Otis Street Arts Project because we're on Otis Street. Functional. But we also, like, we all have studios. We're kind of mostly, we're curated by the person who runs the place. So there's one of each. There's like one person who works with paper, one person who works with wood. And we also don't, this is crucial, we don't have trash removal. So when I have junk, I'm like, does anyone want this? And someone else will make it into a beautiful piece of art. And I'm like, wow, I almost took that to the dumpster. Hit me, what you got?
So may I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, first of all, I think it's a very interesting talk.
Thank you.
I'm a physicist.
Cool.
So
Cool.
And
Did I get it wrong?
I have a question in my mind for a long time. I
Yeah.
like art.
Cool.
And you have spent enough, well, I shouldn't say enough, you have spent a good amount of time with engineers and physicists in Sanford lab. So what's the biggest difference? Who cares about the similarity? What's the biggest difference you think between you and engineers and scientists, physicists?
Perfect. That's a great question. I'm going to rephrase it just for Zoom, just so people can follow along. So the question is kind of not just what are the similarities, but what are the differences, in my mind, between artists and engineers and physicists? And I think the sort of headline that I would put out there is that engineers and physicists are, I think, trying to solve problems or are posing questions that can presumably be answered. And I think the most successful artwork for me pose questions that don't have answers. Or another way of thinking about it is like I make machines, things that look like machines, but machines solve problems for people, and I'm actually trying to make fun problems, make good trouble. So I would see that as a big difference, that I want to provoke ideas and thoughts in people's minds, and that's sort of the creation. That's the real problem I'm trying to solve, is I want to leave people with questions. And so when I design things, I have a lot of latitude, and it can be hard to narrow it down, but the main design goal for me is to leave you with something to chew on afterwards, rather than solving a particular problem. So I don't know how that matches with your experience as a physicist. I'd be curious to hear. But that's kind of my guess.
That's a big question. So physicists and artists, they both create, but there is as far as I can tell, there is a difference. And maybe you are right. Artists, the physicists can give you the answer which could be wrong. I know all answers are not correct. And
They can be.
artists that can make you more satisfied or more curious, or I just don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, and I guess I should say too, like I speak from my own seat here, literally and metaphorically, and that there are so many kinds of art. So maybe I shouldn't try to speak for all artists, but certainly the art that I find most interesting is the kind that is like a little itch in people's brains. And you walk away, and the next day you're like, man, I didn't think that was very good, but I'm still thinking about it. So that's my guess.
Will you be traveling this show?
I have been traveling the show so far. This is its second appearance, actually. I should have mentioned, it was initially at Black Hills State University, which was an amazing experience at the Rudell Gallery. So I showed it the first time there. Now I think I've worked out more of the bugs, but we'll find out. But yes, I am trying to travel it. So I have a couple of really strong prospects, both in this state and in my area on the East Coast. But
I'm curious how, because this is here, and we all know about surf and school months. I'm just really curious somewhere else how you see.
yeah, sorry, I meant to rephrase that. So just curious about whether the show will travel, and then also how other people outside of this area will be, how interested people will be, or how much people will understand about surf. And yeah, as an East Coaster, I wasn't totally read in on surf's existence for the longest time. And I probably learned about it later than I should have. I used to work at National Geographic News, which is a daily science news desk. And I feel like we might have done one or two things while I was there about its creation, the timing matches. But in general, I don't think most people are aware of it. And the fact that there's this totally wild, massive international collaboration unfolding before our very feet, I guess, under our feet, literally underfoot. So workshopping that one. That's wild stuff. And everyone that I've described it to back home on the East Coast is just so interested in that idea of this. I make a lot of art about technology, and most of my day-to-day artwork is about technology and how it affects our lives and how it changes our lives. And I'm interested in surf in particular because it's been a couple of rounds of that, like there was the native knowledge of all the things you could do with the Black Hills and like all of the power that it had and the great importance that it had. and the medicine that it offered and the food and like the ways of living with this landscape. And then all of the engineering that went into making the Homestake mine and all the work and just incredible engineering, and also accidentally digging under Main Street twice. All of that as a way of like technology, like shaping this landscape a second time, and then yet again, like landscape reflecting its new use as this international science facility. It's interesting to me, and there's a lot there for people outside this area too. So I think it's been well received so far. I don't think I can quite talk about where it's going next, but we're close. And I'm honestly scheduling it out through 2028 right now. So I think people outside of this area are floored about surf's existence. It's pretty cool. Questions? Yeah.
I'm really impressed with the pieces that really describe a physical idea, a phenomenon. Like the uncertainty one in particular. I'm interested in your process for how you go from coming up with that idea and kind of making sure you understand that process fully. Is it in discussions with the scientists that you had there, or is it do you go home and
Ooh, yeah. Okay, so the question I think is really sort of like, how do I take an idea and then make it actually into a functioning, interesting artwork? And like, what are the mechanics that are used, and how do I identify those? And was it through like talking to people? Is it through hitting the books? Is it through other things? I'm a total digital pack rat, I gotta be honest. I have like a sketchbook, which is a big notebook on my computer, an Obsidian document, that whenever I see something that I like the look of, I'm a gleaner. I'll take a photo of random machine in an alley that I liked the typography on, and it goes in the sketchbook. And then later, like the cat machine, right? Insert 25 cents to feel something. That was a real machine that I'd seen 10 years before, and I just stashed it in my list of cool looking machines. So there's some of that. So I just kind of have my own pack rat, like pack to dwell within and to draw on. But yeah, no, I mean, a lot of kind of just trying to understand conversationally from people, like what the struggle is. Like I'm in this for the plot, I'm in it for the stories, and like getting people to tell me what their troubles are and what they were wrestling with. Like those are the parts that honestly I don't think get shared as much. I read a website called Hack a Day, which is like a daily, more than one a day, but it's like people making cool stuff randomly, like randos doing it. And they have what they call the fail of the week. It sounds judgy. It's people nominating themselves. They're like, I tried to make this thing, it didn't work. I love that. I love the things that, like within science publications, I don't think you hear the things, you do within a paper, you hear about like methods that were tried and didn't work, but like, you don't hear someone griping over a beer, do you? Like, so I want that. I looked for that. I talked to people as much as I could to try to pull that out. Just like, what are the real struggles? Like having to move the BH underground campus because of blasting twice. All those lead bricks. You saw the photo of lead bricks earlier? Yeah, those were students and Doug like hauling those around. Mostly by hand with one mine car. Like imagine moving so many tons of lead. And imagine where your mental state would be about that. I want that. I want the plot. I want the sort of soap opera side of things. And I try to draw those out in the mechanics that are expressed in an artwork. So like this knob, I want it to be both a little bit fun and also a little bit sort of like, ugh, I wanted that one too, you know? And so it's not always about like what's pleasant or like what's fun feeling. I want some of that. I want you to have both your dessert and your vegetables. Yeah.
Hinting off that, the model of the atom you made there with the copper gas
Yeah.
is awesome. It's astonishing to me that you made a whole bunch of those that talk to each other. They're networked together over Wi-Fi. That's as a layperson, that's feat of electrical engineering on top of the art. Pretty awesome. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, totally. Thank you. So the question was pointing out something that I had not revealed yet in this talk, which is that there's one of these little guys here. And if you look on your phones right now, you will now see a wireless network called Little Ones. They talk to each other over Wi-Fi. They form a mesh network. they occasionally will segment that network into a couple different. Each of them knows its physical position. So I went around earlier with my laptop building a spreadsheet with their X and Y in the room, because when you tap one, it ripples outwards from it. And so they each need to know their position, which means I need to keep track of their internal identifiers, which means they need to be able to negotiate with each other to be like, okay, we're all hearing each other well in this current radio environment, which is constantly changing and messy and noisy. And a lot of that magic, honestly, these days, like the tools are just so good. So I like to say I write all my own software, which on one level is true, but I stand on the shoulders of so many hardworking, unpaid, open source giants, because I'm using a mesh networking library here that's pretty much 3 lines of code. I'm like, okay guys, let's call it little ones, now go. That's amazing. So yeah, I think I ended up with 28 because I must have left one at home, and this is the other one. 28 out of 30, I'll take it. And they form the mesh network, and my laptop can join that network and send them instructions, which is fun. But they sort of self-assemble, and there's actually 2 different microcontrollers on here. Microcontrollers, just simple little computers. They don't have a whole lot of smarts, which is fine. That means I don't have to worry about, software updates or ads or passwords. None of that stuff. Microcontrollers are very constrained environments. Like one of the ones that I use a lot is really quite eerily similar to the first computer I ever touched when I was a little less than 3 years old, which is an 8088, 1 megahertz. It had, I want to say, I probably have this wrong, but it was somewhere like 16 kilobytes of RAM. And actually these microcontrollers, similar, like they're 2 to 8 kilobytes of RAM. And then they have some storage, but it's similar. It's like 32 kilobytes of storage. One of these is a pretty big gun. It's got like 4 megabits, which is to say half a megabyte. They're constrained. It's more of a haiku kind of programming in some ways. Like you can't do everything with every device. And that is okay. I'm able to do what I want. And for more complex things that need to have more smarts than these, I can use full computers. I mean, there's one called the Raspberry Pi, it was a nonprofit. Now it's been made into a capitalist enterprise. But Raspberry Pi sells computers that were intended for children. And so you buy this thing. It's like between literally $5, and now like $150. But for the most part, it's at the low end of the range. So I'm an artist. I'm a full-time artist. I'm paying my own bills. The $20 computer, if I fry that, I'm having a bad day. I'm not having a bad month. If I fry a MacBook. So I really, I'm able to get pretty far with these simple computers and make them do complex things like that, like build their own mesh network and nominate like one of them to be like the root node that helps communicate with all the others. And like those kind of smarts these days are a lot easier. So I am blessed by the silicon in that way. Thank you. Questions? Yeah.
Hopefully kind of a simple question.
Sure.
Kind of an origin question, because you're applying technology in a very awesome way. You said you were kind of a self-taught on the electrical side. What was the inspiration for wanting to learn it?
Yeah.
It's a big step from doing a quick Google search or YouTube video to implementing it.
No doubt, yeah. So the question is essentially how I got this far with electronics while being self-taught. And it's a good question. Oh, I bumped something. Cool. The main thing for me was, I don't know, I had wanted to learn it earlier in life. My dad gave me this amazing Radio Shack book, Forrest Mims. It's a classic. Yeah, you've seen it. It's sketches and stuff, and it's like the structure of the atom. I was too young. I saw the structure of the atom and kind of bounced off of it. Here I am making an atom. But I was able to learn a lot with more new kind of learning methods, like things that are very photographic for me. I'm a photo guy, like my background was photojournalism, so for me being able to see pictures of everything was super helpful, and just being able to read a lot. And I've been doing, I first started learning electronics deliberately as a New Year's resolution in 2013, and within like 2 or 3 years, some interesting constraints helped me. I was doing this for the most part initially in a 6-foot workbench in the corner of the bedroom that I share with my wife. So I didn't have a whole lot of working space. I live in a condo, right? So when you've got 6 foot of bench and almost no storage, you work with surface mount resistors because they're smaller. You can fit more of them. So I learned surface mount, and I was like, well, okay, I'm kind of running out of surface mount kits to assemble. Gee, SparkFun has this cool tutorial on Eagle. Maybe I'll learn Eagle and do my own boards. And it was right about when, like, I don't know, some of the first, like, I'm blanking on the name of it, but some of the first, like, board houses were really getting open to hobbyists, and I could send off a file and get a board back, 3 copies for $5. So at that point, like, that saves me a lot of wiring, and so I very quickly got excited about that. And really the things I've been learning since, I'm trying to get better with analog things. I mean, everything is analog. There's no such thing as digital except for our convenience, right? But I'm trying to get better about things that are analog, and so transistors, like using them properly, and like, you know, FETs versus BJTs and all that good stuff. But I did early on start thinking about artworks. When I made my first electronic artwork 4 years later in 2017, I kind of winged it. And it worked okay, and someone bought it, and it's still in their house, and it works okay to this day, but it has a LiPo in it, and one of these days. So that's not great. But I realized right after that, I need to make things that will degrade well in other people's houses. And they, in particular, need to not start fires. That's kind of a thing people expect from artworks. And I started showing work in the DC area at kind of open-minded nonprofit galleries, DC Art Center, whoop, whoop. Galleries also expect things from artworks, like they expect they can put it on the wall and plug it in. They don't want to be running software updates. They don't want to be typing passwords in. They don't want to be starting stuff. Like, you're done with GUIs immediately. Like, you need like something that starts itself. And so on the electronic side of things too, like, they need to be fault tolerant. So I use like PTC thermal fuses that self-reset. If there is some kind of internal short, I won't burn anyone's house down. And there needs to be like lightning arresters, so I'll use, you know, TVS diodes to kind of catch any super high voltages, and then a couple of Zeners just above the power rail, and I use internal regulation and also like commercial mean well supplies. So getting all those kind of like checklist items of like making sure that it degrades well, and if it fails, that it's ideally the power supply that someone can plug in themselves, and I can mail them one. Because I can expect that from an art buyer. I cannot expect them to swap out the LM7805. Like, that's not happening. So I've actually spoken about that in particular at the Hackaday Super Conference. So I got to go talk about what it's like to build circuit boards for artworks and make artworks that are electronic cool things that also behave like artworks. So that was a fun talk. There's a recording if you're interested. But it's been a long, weird road, and I don't have like amazing answers, and some of the places I learned from I don't love anymore. But I do recommend that if anyone is interested and you do want to start learning this stuff, there are amazing resources. Go buy a kit, electronics kit. That'll start you down the road. There are some brands like Arduino and Raspberry Pi that used to be nonprofits focused on children. Go buy their old stuff. Now they're both capitalist enterprises. I'm so bummed out. But they still exist, and there's still a lot of tutorials. So if a 5th grader can learn it, you can learn it. It doesn't matter if you're not a 5th grader anymore. It's fine, go do it, it's fun. Yeah.
So I'm really curious about kind of your road, it's sort of paying off of the previous conversation, your road from becoming a photojournalist to becoming someone who makes electronics. And I'm wondering if you could talk about how the electronics you make allow you to accomplish goals that photojournalism couldn't. And then maybe some of the things that you wish your electronics could do that they can't, that photos could accomplish, but you wish that your electronics would get there and that you aspire to get.
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, so sort of drilling into a bit of how I made it, how I jumped from photojournalism to making electronic sculptures, and then the contrasts and the powers of each medium and how I can imbue one with the other, and what photographs have to offer that sculptures don't, and vice versa, and kind of what the power is that I would hope to imbue from photography in the works. So yeah, just a little bit more on the road there, I guess. I only shot for a couple of years. I only photographed. I was a photojournalist. I only photographed for a few years. And then I was a photo editor for, I guess, about 6 years, and then switched to being a product manager at a media company by way of being a story producer. So at Nat Geo, I got to produce some large web stories along with a team of other talented producers. Amy Bucci, I don't know if you're out there on the Zoom, but I got to produce like a new hominin story for Nat Geo, which was just like a wild experience. Media, when done right, like photographs, can convey things so quickly. And I think of a good photograph as being almost like a brain hack, because you see it so viscerally and it's just right there and you're looking at it and it is as though it is in front of you and you pre-process it. Your brain deals with this information so intuitively and at such a deep level, using all of our hunter-gatherer instincts. The way that you think about photographs is you don't even really think about them necessarily. You just are in the photograph, like it is there or all around you. And I do try to bring that in with the artworks and the sort of like, I don't know, like the way I set them in a period. Like I'll say this should be from the 30s because I think that would be a great time to be thinking about this. And I try to look for those sort of visceral, contextual, formal things just to drop some art words, but like the appearance of a thing, like really trying to hack your brain in the same way as a photograph does. Like a really strong photograph, you're just immediately absorbed. And I want these sculptures to at least have the same power of kind of putting you in a place. That's my goal. Things that photographs do well, I think the poise, like the being just like a frozen thing. That's a really interesting power. I don't aspire to do that so much in my artwork, but I appreciate and respect it. And if anything, I guess that's a difference, is I sort of am stepping away from that part of my photo background and like trying to make things that are dynamic and that change as you look at them or don't. Or things that you leave in a hallway and each time you walk by, you're like, oh, that's different. I hadn't seen that one yet. So those are differences, I would say. And I don't know, I guess in media I did learn to, and this is something that, I don't know if there are other artists in the room, but like in media I learned that you really only get like 10 seconds. And if you don't have someone's interest, they're just gonna keep going. I mean, not even that online, like 2 seconds. Like you've gotta just get people. And if your artwork doesn't get people, both in the artwork itself, but also like the way you describe the artwork and the way you talk about the artwork and the way you show the artwork in photographs. Like you've really got the same limited attention span no matter what, whenever anyone's walking through an art space. I am lucky to get 15 seconds of someone's attention. If I get those 15 seconds, I'm like, yes. So that's one thing I learned from media and I continue to think about to this day of just like how little you really get to ask as an artist. Like I don't get to ask for more than 15 seconds. If I get it, it's a tremendous gift. And I love to live up to more attention than that, but it's very rare. And I think some artists get too much in their own heads and they're like, yes, people will wade through my 1,200 word description of this artwork. No, they will not. Questions? I don't know where we're at on time. Is anyone bored? We're over time. I'm gonna call it. Do we have any online questions? I think we're good, right? Cool, great. Thank you all so much for coming out.
All right, so before everybody leaves, again, if you want to show that slide with the, yes. So that's this Friday, I believe, right? Is that Friday, 23rd?
Yeah, Friday.
Yeah, that's happening Friday, so if you're interested, please come to that. His show will be at the Apex Gallery until March 13th, if I remember correctly. Something mid-March-ish?
Yeah, mid-March. Yeah.
Apex Gallery, okay, so if you're familiar with campus, it's in the classroom building on the main level, which is technically the second floor, but it's the main level. And it's kind of on the east side of the building. Classroom building is a big, like, octagon, so you have to make kind of a circle to go around it. But yeah, it's on the east side of the building on campus.
And it's on Google Maps.
What?
It's on Google Maps.
It is on Google Maps.
And there are lots of signs.
Is,
I found it.
there is visitor parking in front of the O'Hara building, which is where the Museum of Geology is. So you can park there, and it's a very short walk to the classroom building from there. So yes, please come to that. Before I let you go, I want to make sure you guys know about next month. So normally we're here every third Tuesday at 6 p.m. In February, we do a special presentation in conjunction with Engineers Week. So it's still on the third Tuesday, but it's held on campus. And this year it's at 5 o'clock, not 6. So it'll be held in the Beck Ballroom in the Surbeck Center at 5 o'clock on February 17th. And we have a really exciting guest. Carrie Bryan from the Discovery Channel's Mythbusters is going to be the presenter. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So Beck Ballroom can seat 300. So if you're interested, I recommend coming early to get seated. So don't come here in February. Go to campus, 5 o'clock, Beck Ballroom, February 17th. Okay, that's it. Thank you.